ingredients that we're going to need are 1 spaghetti squash, some ground chicken, mozzarella cheese, heavy cream, Parmesan cheese, cream cheese, oil, butter, and various seasonings. What we need are this knife and cutting board, melon baller as a scraper, wooden spoon, 2 measuring cups/bowls, a cheese grater, a frying pan, and a baking dish. So the very first thing that you want to do is turn on your oven set to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So with the squash cut in half, we're now just going to take the melon baller and scoop all of the seeds away into the compost. So now that we've scraped out the seeds, both halves looking like this, we're just going to place them down in our baking dish, and we're going to rub them so that they're coated with some oil. Now that both halves are covered in oil, we are just going to sprinkle on a little bit of salt and pepper. Now that they've been fully coated, we're just going to turn them upside down so that the skin is showing to the top, and wait for the oven to finish preheating before we put those in. Once you've put the spaghetti squash into the oven, it's going to take about 30 minutes, so you can set your timer and work on the chicken. So to make our chicken filling, we're going to get some butter and melt it on the pot, and then once it's melted, we'll add in our spice mixture. You can see the ratios on the screen, and we're also going to be adding in the chicken. 1 whole container is enough for the recipe. So once the butter is melted, like I said, we're going to add in our ground chicken and our seasoning mixture. Break up the chicken, stir it nicely. I'm just going to cook the whole thing until it's nice and brown, basically cooking the meat fully, which should be roughly 15 minutes. So once the chicken is fully cooked, you're going to be adding your cream cheese, mozzarella, Parmesan cheese, and cream. Since they all go in at the same time, I've measured them into 1 container, just so it's a bit easier. And you can use the spoon you're stirring with just to scrape your container and make sure everything gets out. And then you want to just simmer this for a few minutes until it's all creamy and melted and fully combined all of your ingredients. So it's now been the 30 minutes, and as you can see, I've taken the squash out of the oven. So first thing that you want to do is actually increase our oven temperature. We're now looking for 450 Fahrenheit. And then, the next part, and do this very carefully because it's burning hot, is you want to turn the squash, I'm going to use my spoon to help me. You want to turn the squash over. And now, again being carefully, because like I said, it's burning hot, you want to use the same tool you used for the seeds, this melon ball scraper thing, and scrape the inside of the squash. We're going to leave it in the shell, but basically we're going to start forming the pasta. So once you've finished scraping out the squash, it should look roughly like this. And now what you want to do is spoon the chicken sauce into the squash shells, putting roughly half per squash. Once you've put the sauce into the squash, you want to grab some grated mozzarella, and we're just going to make a nice layer topped on top. And now that our cheese is on, this goes in the oven at 450 for another 5 or so minutes, just until that cheese is nice and melted. So while you're waiting the 5 minutes for your squash in the oven, you can do the final step and just fine chop some parsley so you have a garnish. So as you can see, I've put the parsley onto the squash. I've also cut it in half 1 more time, so we have 4 servings total. And this is what it looks like, your cheesy chicken spaghetti squash all fancy on the plate.